Okay, welcome to Site 4. We're stood here at Rougemont Castle, which is the highest point in the city centre. Just as a point of interest, when you walk around Exeter, many of the buildings that you will see have this sort of fantastic reddy sort of purpley orange stone, and this actually tells us something about what's beneath your feet, the geology beneath your feet. And what you can see over here is there are two key types of lithology, two key rock types that make up many of the buildings, the stone that's used within the buildings around Exeter. The first of these are the sort of volcanic rocks that we see. These are ones that either have veins that run through them, these calcitic or calcite veins that run through them. We also see rocks that have bubbles in. Both of these are what are known locally as trap. They're volcanic rocks. They're about 250 million years old. If you think back to that period in time, this whole area was part of a vast desert plain with a huge mountain range far out to the west. And it was built in a period called the Varscan orogeny, which was a big period of mountain building. Now this whole area actually had pockets of volcanism, and what you're stood on here, Rougemont Castle, is one such pocket of volcanism. If you go to other places around the area, for example Hatherley, which is north of Dartmoor, again there you will see volcanic rocks of a similar type. It's a very difficult stone to work with. This stone known locally as trap. It's effectively basalt, but it makes up some of the most prestigious buildings in Exeter. Buildings such as Rougemont Castle, also the Ram Royal Albert Memorial Museum, which is down on Queen Street as well. A lot of the other medieval buildings in Exeter that you will see is made up of this much more brittle rock called breccia. And breccia is effectively a hodgepodge. It's a mixture of different lithologies, different rock types. And if you look at it, without trying to destroy it too much, you'll see that actually it's quite crumbly. Bits of breccia, small rock types, the matrix actually falls apart quite easily. This was actually produced from these sort of vast mountain ranges out to the west. When we had these big flood events, it would bring material down, it would wash material down onto the Great Plains around here and actually form a sort of natural concrete. And that's why it's got lots of different rock types in it. It's very brittle. But because it's so easy to work with, it was used in lots of medieval buildings. If you go around Cathedral Green, you'll see lots of the churches, lots of the sort of chapels around there use this rock type. So a little sort of note to actually think about how the geology of Exeter makes up the city, the infrastructure of the city, many of these older buildings. What we're really interested in here though, on this particular sort of geological feature, is thinking about what we started off talking about at the very start. And that is thinking about the topography and the hydrology of Exeter. So if we sort of pan over to this area here, we are currently barred from going into the park because of the Rugby World Cup, very sadly. Well, it's a very good thing, the rugby, but sadly we can't get in there today. What we'd like you to do is actually go through the little gateway, which is just to my left here, of Athelstan's Tower, and there you get a most superb view up towards the university, so looking north towards the university. What we want you to do there is actually produce a sketch of what you see in the landscape, and we want you to actually annotate that sketch with the knowledge, the tacit knowledge that you've gained as you've walked from the university to this point, okay? Because we want to emphasise that actually in looking from this point, from Athelstan's Tower up towards the university, it's actually very difficult to pick out those key topographic features that we've already identified. So the Tadderford Brook by the university, the Long Brook, both of which you've walked over, are to all intents and purposes hidden. As you sketch that area towards the university, we want you to include that detail. And whilst you might not be able to see much in making that sketch, we want you to annotate that sketch with your knowledge that you've built up from these videos and from walking and exploring the city, reading the articles that we've given you. We want you to think about how that landscape has changed through time. And this will prepare you for one of the assessments that you may wish to do as your group poster activity. So in looking towards the university, think about those topographic features. The topography here is very much linked with the hydrology, which will be a key theme for the assessment. Okay? So think about where the water it actually comes from, so areas such as St Sidwell's, St James. Okay? Think how it actually gets from that area through these brooks down to the river. Okay? So think about what feeds the Tadderford Brook up close to the university, what feeds the Long Brook that we discussed at Site 3, and where it all ends up in the River Exe down to my right here to the west.